the president did today in terms of a strong action, what we've done, DPA across those 3 points. The first order President Trump signed was vigorous, swift. It was the GM order, which directed GM to make ventilators in Kokomo, Indiana in Trump time, which is to say as fast as possible. As the president mentioned, he spoke to Mary Barra today, the CEO of GM. That is moving forward at the same time as the Ford project is moving forward in Rawsonville, Michigan, and I've issued a challenge to those two companies, a la Ford versus Ferrari. This is Ford versus GM. Let's see who gets those ventilators out first. Now, the second point of the compass, which these two orders address today, is this allocation of resource issues. The ventilator companies themselves expressed concern that in this rush to build ventilators, there would be pressure on that supply chain. So what they requested that we do and the president do is to use the DPA to give this gentleman here, is one of the strongest gentlemen in the world in terms of applying things, is to give him the ability to prioritize that supply chain for those ventilator manufacturers. And he will do things like give them what's called a DO rating in the defense procurement, which will allow them to get what they need. Now, the second order, which the president signed today, has to do with the other part of the equation, which is once they make the stuff, okay, where does it go to the right folks? And this is a 3M order. And to be frank, over the last several days, we've had some issues making sure that all of the production that 3M does around the world, enough of it is coming back here to the right places. So what's going to happen with the signing of that order in Trump time is we're going to resolve that issue with 3M probably by tomorrow close of business, because we can't afford to lose days or hours, even minutes in this crisis. Now, the third part of the compass, this third point there, this gets to the hoarding issue. The president stood up here with he's the commander-in-chief, but we have a sheriff in town too, Attorney General Barr. And he stood up here with Attorney General Barr, and Bill Barr said, I'm going to go out and bust him. And guess what? 3 days ago, DOJ went into a warehouse in Jersey, grabbed PPE, and the beauty of that wasn't only seized, but within hours it was turned around and given to healthcare professionals in New York and New Jersey. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful case of using the DPA. Now, what's going to happen tomorrow is the president's going to sign another order, which is in the works. This is interesting. There is a black market springing up, which you have described, where we're having people bid against each other. Brokers come in, they're bidding and bidding on all this different PPE. It's driving the price up. And guess what? You know where it's going? The domestic sources here are being exported. When President Trump heard about that, he said, that's not going to happen anymore under my watch. So tomorrow we're bringing that order, and what's going to do is it's going to empower Customs and Border Protection with the help of people like the Post Office and express mail consigners like UPS to basically deal with that issue. So we are going to crack down unmercifully. And I would say to the hoarders out there, the brokers who are trying to make money off the misery of people in this country or around the world, that's got to stop. And if you've got inventory, what you need to do is pick up a phone and not call somebody out around the world. You call FEMA and say, we got some stuff, we'll give it to you at a fair price, and be done with that, because that stuff has absolutely got to stop. So that's hang on. So that's what we're going to be looking for. And when we hear cases like this, we're going to aggressively issue order after order to crack down on it. Now, this is not my role to take a bunch of questions, but let me tell you one other thing before I leave the podium. It's a story which I'd love to share with you today, because this again illustrates one of the key principles of this president and this vice president, which is to wed the full force of the federal government with the full power of private enterprise. And just 2 days ago, we at the White House got an urgent SOS from the chief of police of the New York Police Department. And they are in a situation now, because of the strain on their resources, where personnel such as their homicide detectives were having to go on into houses and deal with COVID issues without protective gear. Now, the beauty of this president is because of his leadership, we were able to solve that problem in 2 phone calls. 2 phone calls. The first one went to Phoebe Novakovic at General Dynamics. Phoebe, can you call Tom Kennedy at Raytheon? I need you guys to basically scoop up all the Tyvek suits you can and find any gloves you can. This president, under his leadership, and that voluntary efforts and the pride and patriotism you talked about earlier, that we had 4,000 Tyvek suits delivered to the New York PD within 16 hours. That's a new record in Trump time. At the same time, a second phone call was made to Tara Engel at Pernod Ricard and Laura Lane at UPS. They were on the same phone call, and I said, Tara, Laura, we got this issue. They need hand sanitizer. Literally, within 2 hours, we had 50-gallon drums, 6,000 gallons of hand sanitizer on a UPS truck heading up to the NYPD, and it probably arrived today with a promise from Pernod that they will continue to supply the NYPD throughout the course of this crisis. So this is a beautiful thing that America is rallying to. We are becoming a stronger, more united nation, and I couldn't be more proud of this president, this administration. These guys up here are doing a heck of a job organizing the supply chain. And my promise to you is that the president is going to use that DPA to make sure that the American people, particularly our healthcare professionals, get the PPE, the medicines, everything we need. So let me stop there. I don't think it's my place here to field a bunch of questions. Yeah, okay.
This is the Buy American executive order.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. Answer. Sure, you go ahead.
Okay.
Come here.
One of the things that this crisis has taught us, sir, is that we are dangerously over-dependent on a global supply chain. For our medicines, like penicillin, our medical supplies, like masks, and our medical equipment, like ventilators. We have right now, as we speak, over 50 countries have already imposed some forms of export restrictions in their country against the rest of the world. And what we're learning from that is that no matter how many treaties you have, no matter how many alliances, no matter how many phone calls, when push comes to shove, you run the risk as a nation of not having what you need. And if there's any vindication of the president's Buy American, secure borders, and a strong manufacturing base philosophy, strategy, and belief, it is this crisis, because it underscores everything that we see there. So the Buy American order, which is going through process, would do a couple things. It would simply say, not during this crisis, because we don't want to disrupt anything. I want to be really clear about that. But going forward, after this is over, the VA, DOD, HHS, and this government buys American for essential medicines, our medical countermeasures, and the medical supplies and equipment we need. At the same time, it will deregulate so we can get the FDA and EPA to facilitate domestic manufacturing and then innovate. Because the key here is having advanced manufacturing on U.S. soil that can leapfrog other countries so we don't have to worry about competing against cheap sweatshop labor, lax environmental regulations, different tax regimes, and the massive subsidies of foreign governments who are actually directly attacking our industrial base. So be patient with that, sir. The other priorities we have right now are the DPA and what the task force is doing. But if we learn anything from this crisis, it should be never again should we have to depend on the rest of the world for our essential medicines and countermeasures.
And by the way, we've cut them out also, to be honest. We've stopped orders going from certain places, and in a couple of places, like we had a big order going to Italy on important outfits and some ventilators, and it was going to Italy. They made the order a long time ago, and I said, you got to let it go. They had an order, and I could have cut it. Under the act, I could have cut it. I said, nope, you can't do that. You got to let it go. You know, they have big problems. We had an order going to Spain. And I said, let it go. I could have stopped